Well, I thought I would just kind of do a general video and go over the fuselage before I start covering it. This is pretty much ready to go, and I'm just going to kind of just wing this and just let you kind of see a little bit of everything that's going on. This is something unusual here. We've had a bit of a problem, it seems, with ELTs, and this is a better ground that I had to come up with. This is the normal bracket that Cub Crafters uses, which attaches to the back of the extended baggage compartment and attaches over here. But every EX3 I've built, I've had a problem. Once I installed the ELT and connected it, you're supposed to run a test, and when you first turn the switch on to the arm position, it will go through a self-test. When it's done, after maybe 10 seconds, then you'll get a long solid beep and one solid LED. There's a red LED light there. It'll flash once, that tells you everything's good. However, if you get a series of beeps, that tells you what the error is. And I kept getting an error. It was 3 beeps, a pause, and then 5 beeps and flashes of the LED. And that meant that there was a problem with the antenna connection. And it was really strange because I would check the antenna, I would check the connections, I would check the ELT, I would check the antenna, everything, and yet 1 minute it would work and 1 minute it wouldn't work. I've replaced everything on the last airplane trying to figure out what it might be. This time I worked with Cub Crafters to try to figure out what's going on and why there's some variables here, because I took the antenna, the ELT, and the antenna, the ELT, and the cable, and here on the bench, I just tested it on the bench, not grounded or anything, but just on the bench with the antenna connected. It worked. Everything tested fine. I install it on the plane. I connect it to the ELT, to the antenna, to the bracket, so the bracket should ground it to the aluminum extended baggage, and it showed a fault for the antenna, same as I'd gotten on the other airplanes. So finally, after we tested everything again, everything was fine, then we decided it must be the ground after talking to the engineers at RAMI, R-A-M-I antennas. And so I just took this piece of aluminum, cut a hole in it, put it to that, and attached the antenna to it, and it worked fine. So it works fine like this. So we just decided to go ahead and mount this until the engineers at Cub Crafters figures out what's going on with this. We figure it must be something to do with the bracket. Maybe it's not enough of a ground. Something's happening with this bracket, and I wasn't ready to drill a hole through the baggage panel yet. So in any case, that's what I came up with. I just made it wide enough to go between the stringers, and then I zip tied it to the stringers and to the bracket. Ran this up here. The end of the antenna will go up here in the top stringer. So anyway, that's something you might want to look for if you're using a canard ELT. Be sure you test it and get the kinks worked out before you cover, because it's a lot easier now to do that. We can see here that I'm just going to walk around and just let you see what we've done and discuss it a little bit. You can see here the pulley, and most of this is in my forum post covered in detail, but here's the pulley that's coming back off to the bungee spring. And I've just got this back here tied out of the way for now, along with the cables, some of the cables that are here. These are the elevator cables that are coming back. I just put some zip ties them here to the middle. I want them just to be out of the way while we cover. So this spring is going to mount to the elevators later. It's going up to this pulley, which is going back down to the back of the jack screw. So as you take the trim, goes up and down, it actually pulls this and pulls the spring and helps take some of the weight off of the elevator. This, if you've got the G3X executive glass, this is the string pot, they call it. This is the actual sensor with a very fine wire that goes up and down, and that sends the signal back to the instrument panel to the G3X, telling it where your trim is, so you can look on the panel and you can see the trim location up or down. That's what this is. You have to mount this onto this plate. You can see how it goes. And I go into detail with pictures and stuff also on the forum post, but here you can actually see the video of how that's going, how this, first you're riveting this to this plate, and then this plate is actually bolting on with the motor. The trim motor bolts are coming up through here and here. This is the jack screw. When you have the jack screw, you should have two washers here that are very important, a 4/16 washer here and a 4/16 washer on this side. And then we've got a collar here, which we've drilled holes through, and we put a pin through, and then we've safety wired it. This is the motor, trim motor. See this attaching up there? This will be where the tube goes through to attach your front stabilizers. We've greased up the jack screw very well. The jack screw, you can't really see it, but it drops down through this top part. Every one I've had to do a lot of sanding in here to get the jack screw to drop in from the top down through here. And I show you how to do that in the forum post. You take a drill with like a 3/8 bit, and then wrap sandpaper around it, stick it down in here, and then just run it, so you basically hone out the inside of this. Every one of them have been too tight to let me slip the jack screw down through there. You can't really see how all that attaches, but you're match drilling holes here on the fin to go through there, and another one up here. But this is the fin that's going on here. You'll see that I've gone ahead, and this is the screw here. We'll match drill once we've fitted the rudder on first onto here to be sure we've got it fitting in here properly before we set the distance on this. So we make the rudder fit nice between the two areas here. And once it's good, we match drill a hole through here and install this bolt. These, I just get started. These will actually end up limiting the elevator amounts of the elevator angles, which we'll set when we finish with the plane at the end. But it's easier to get this bolt and set nut in here now while you've got no cover in the way. Later, this is going to be open here, but it's tight getting in there. So I do everything I can now to try to make it easier later. This is a bracket on the back that's going to mount the data plate eventually. So your cover will go across here, then you'll have your data plate, which Cub Crafters will supply to you with the manufacturer's name and serial number and so forth. It has to be screwed on here. This is the wiring harness that's coming back. I'll go to the other side in a minute and get it, but this is coming on back to go to the rear tail lights, rudder lights, which will eventually come around this post and end here and connect to this. But there's a blue ground wire here that's going to connect to those connector wires on the rudder. That blue wire comes up, as you can see here. Eventually we're going to connect this to the back as a ground to this hole here when we install the data plate. And it's hard as hell. I mean, you got to reach your hand up. We've got an access panel here, but you got to reach your panel up and you got to get that on there. Well, in any case, that's where it's going to go. So you need to get the powder coat off now. So you can see I've gone in and I've already sanded off the powder coat around that hole. So later it's really hard. That powder coat's on there good. So it's really hard later to get that off when you're trying to manipulate it with your hand. You can see here some of the wiring for this. The wiring harness is coming back up. You've got two wiring harnesses here. If you've got the G3X, you've got one that's going to be for this trim sensor that we just talked about right here. And it's going to come around, and it's actually right here where it's connecting to that separate harness which we ran down this stringer. And then you got the regular harness, which is going to come down and go to the trim motor. And then it's going to continue on here, and that's the one we just talked about, where we're going to make it available to come back in to put the rudder lights attached here later. I've gone ahead, as I tell you in the forum post, and I've put the turnbuckles all on right now with the screws. This is what's going to attach to the elevators later. I've labeled them, which one is actually going to go to the upside of the elevator and the downside, so that's going to go up. That's going to go down. The elevator is going to come in here. We'll know which cable goes up and which cable goes down. And I left the part numbers on the cable so I knew where they came from. It's important to know exactly how to wire this, run these through the fuselage here. You can kind of see, and I've got really good drawings here. As you can see, you got a double pulley here. So we've got one cable on this side and one cable on this side, and it's continuing to run up underneath the fuselage. You can get to this later, it's just harder. There's going to be an access back there, but it's better to do it right now. So you can see this one on this left side is going to go here, and it goes right up in between that little triangle right there. You can see after you get it tightened, it's going to be just almost touching this tube. It will be off of it just barely, so they tell you to put a little bit of this chafe tape along this tube right here. So that's the left side. The right side then is coming along. You can see it where it's running to the left side of this tube in here, and it's going to go on back. Again, you can get to all this later. It's just better if you get it straight right now while you don't have a cover on it. Okay. Then that wiring harness, of course, is just running all along here and here, and you put it back out of the way, and then we've got dabs of silicone just holding it in place every so often, and it's going to come out up here. And the orange wires are going to go down and go underneath to the belly. Just get them out of the way, tape them out of the way for now. The white ones, you just want to move them up here and just put them somewhere out of the way. They're going to go up here behind the instrument panel later after we paint the plane. Okay. Here we can see the little bit of the fuel system. So you can see this one. This one's coming out. Just left my balloons on that I tested. Just keeps them covered. I go in detail about how I air pressure test these, but it comes down. It's going to come down this way, comes around. You can see where it comes in here, and that's actually going to the top of the fuel selector valve. That's right there. And then that's where it tees and comes back down here. This one right here is going to end up going to the low point drain, so we're just going to run it over here and leave it for right now out of the way. There's another one here that's coming out of the bottom. This is the bottom of the selector. This is where, when you select the fuel that you want to come in, it's going to the bottom of the fuel selector. It's coming through this hose. This will end up going to the gasolator and a fuel pump and so forth, and feed the engine. So right now we're just putting them in this general area and getting them, zip tying them out of the way with a little bit of slack up here that we'll cut off later. You can see here the fuel line from this side is going to come around behind the post, come down generally right here. It's going to come right the outside of the post, come back and go up underneath. You can see how that goes for the panel. It goes underneath. It's all going downhill, so we keep it running downhill constantly, coming around here, downhill, 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 coming back around, coming back here, going through here, going to this T here. And again, this is the one that's going into the fuel selector here, top part. So that's bringing your right fuel tank down into your fuel selector. Also, what it's doing though, is you see it's downhill, the fuel selector. So the fuel is going to, any water is going to continue to run down this one, which is running this way. It's going downhill, 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 through there, to this corner, goes back down, it's going over here, it's going to this low point drain, okay, along with the one from the right side. So any water that's coming out of that right tank is going, before it goes into the fuel selector, it's going to come around back here. Water is going to separate, come back here, and bound to here to this rear drain from the right tank before it gets into the fuel selector. Okay, so that's your water there. You'll see here that you've got another one coming on the right side. That's the one that's going to go to the back side, back tank connector on the right tank. Okay, over here then we've got the back. You got two. What you got? You got two inputs from each fuel tank. This will be the front. Obviously, this will be the back. This one's coming around. And go like this. Comes down here. Running down here. Excuse me, coming across. Where'd it go? Here. And then coming back down and going over here. and it's just continuing to go down to the low point drain here. So that gives you your your drain through the water there. As I talk about too, the stringers, you know, are important. Obviously, they look nice. The stringers are keeping the fabric off of the airplane, you know, off of the sides. So that's the string. So the stringers is really a lot of looks. I say to, you know, put them where they're supposed to go. There's posts here already. I put them here, I put them there, and then I look. I just get down there and eyeball them on them nice and straight when you look down those like that. When you look down from the top like this, you see how you want to look down through here and make sure it's not going in either. Because sometimes you'll have to actually leave, when you attach them, you'll actually have to leave them away from the tube a little bit to make sure it stays straight when you're looking at them. You just fill it in with the methyl acrylate, which is what we're doing here. You can see here where I fitted them first with clamps, then I go back when I know they're right and I put these marks on them. Then I can remove the stringers, I can scuff the powder coat, get everything ready, then I come back and I dab methyl acrylate right on those spots after I clean it. Then I can come back and stick these on and then re-clamp them down the line. So, you know, there's a lot more detail about that in the forum post about, you know, putting those stringers all on. These are the side fabric spacers that are here, and again, we're just methyl acrylating these on. It's going to the edge of the spacer here. See, it just meets the edge of this like that, comes down. You trim it, make sure it fits good around the gear attached, and then comes back down here. And then we talk about how this stringer has to be pulled in probably, and then methyl acrylate in a position to make sure you're getting a nice smooth thing here. It's not bowed, you know, anywhere. And it's the same on the other side, where we've got a couple of spacers for it too. We're putting this one on here, it's going across, and then this one is going to mount on the here, same way, coming out to the edge of the cowl spacer here. So it's flush with it. We methyl acrylated it. We pulled these stringers in. Well, this one goes in, and then you actually have to do a little cutting on this one. Make sure it's not pushing and bowing this spacer out when it comes around. And then we're using body filler to come back in, and there's a pretty big gap right here. So we fill that gap and make it nice and smooth. The way I like to do it again is with a straight edge. That way you can put straight edges on all your places and see, you know, how it's looking, if you're getting a good straight areas there. What else? The trim motor. I think we kind of went over it, you know, quite a bit. I talk about how you have to, when you do the trim motor, you know, it's got a ground that comes up through this Adele clamp, and there's a ground in here, and that ground is actually attached right here underneath this part here. So when you test it, you get this cable right here, made me up a wire with alligator clips, and put it together, because you have to go to the front of those other two orange wires coming out of the harness and connect it to the battery. When you connect those two to the positive and the negative, you connect this to the negative here, to the negative of the battery. Then you take those two orange wires, they're two different numbers, and you put one on the positive and one on the negative, and the motor will go one way. And then you switch them, put the wires opposite, the other one on the positive, the other one on the negative, and it'll go down. And I'll tell you in the forum post, I show you exactly which wires should be, so that when you put the positive, this one on the positive, this one on the negative, it should go up, for example, so that make sure it's correct. You can switch it later in the G3X setup to show, because you want it, when you push the trim button, you want it to show going nose down. You want it to actually be going nose down. But and if you do the wires the way I tell you, that's the way it'll work to start with. Also, here's where we put the top stringer on. You know, I go back and I put a little body filler here, do the same thing. I try to make it so you don't have gaps, you know, when you're doing stuff like here. The ends of your stringers where they meet your tubes, you just imagine that the fabric is coming across here, so I want to fill that little gap. It doesn't seem like you would notice a lot of little gap, but even that little gap of 1/8 of an inch right there, you'll actually see it in the fabric. So just dab a little body filler in. It doesn't have to be pretty, just smooth it off right across there, because the fabric's just going to touch here. You can see the fabric's going to go like this, Fabric's gonna go like here, here. You know everything's good. Same thing, you know, with this one. You got a good, nice, straight connection there. Here you can see how we've done the extended baggage. This is where our hooks are. End up putting a little bit of methylcrylate underneath these just to hold it up. You know, so that it's not bending. We've methylcrylated the baggage area just occasionally along these corners. You want to leave spots open so you can zip tie things if you want to, like this right here, so you can have room to get through and do zip tying. So you can have room to zip tie fuel lines or so forth. So anyway, you can see about how much, just every so often, put a little dab of methylcrylate in there. Same thing along the bottom of your baggage door, of your extended baggage, I mean, floor all the way up here. Same thing underneath. If you can see it, I actually go underneath and I put a 25-pound weight inside to push it all the way down, and then methylcrylate it all the way up the sides here, like that, all the way down the edges like this, all the way around the top up here. Okay, so then the fabric is going to come up here, and then it's going to go over, you know, to the top of the stringer, and then go back over, you go there, like that. And you can see the exterior extra baggage area here, extended baggage area. You can kind of see the directions are pretty good in the manual and in my forum post. You can see here how this is actually going. So when you end up doing it, this door, this is your baggage door. This little piece goes on the inside there, but then it goes under the lip here. And it goes under the lip over there, and the same thing in the back there. So that's the way that door is going in. You can see I've got the quarter turn receptacles in there. To do the door, you can see here we've done the same thing here. This is the door that we'll put in, and when you put it in, you're going to have a gap here. First, we're going to put methylcrylate back up in there, but make sure it doesn't come out too far, because we're going to fill it with body filler later. These are the two side fabric spacers that you have to put in. So we're going to glue that one in there, and it also has a reinforcement piece that goes on, you know, this side over here. So that's going to go up against it. It just connects this side edge, and then we're going to rivet it in there to give it a good connection there. The baggage door, you can see, is on the inside. So this is the actual baggage door here, and it's going to go down. The manual's a little bit off. It says that this will go, this little piece of aluminum angle will go against the post. It really won't. The door, the baggage door, is going next to the post, and then this is going next to the baggage door, like that. Then I methylcrylate it all together, so you got a complete fit. Same thing here. It's just important. This is going to be the finished look, and it does show up around this baggage door. So you want to make this really nice and really straight. And that's what I do here. Again, I use this to cement so I can see. I know the fabric's going from here to here, and then it's going to wrap around here. So I want it perfectly here. I don't want this sticking out. I don't want it sunk in. I want a nice flat space for that fabric to go to here. We're going to glue all this in here. We're actually, it's not going to be glued here, but we're going to use polyfiber, which is going to, polybrush, which is going to actually go through and glue itself. Polybrush will actually act as a glue also. The carbon fiber doesn't hold it very well, and that's the reason they tell me you have to put these fabric spacers in, is to help hold the polyfiber better than just having to wrap it around here. So we're going to wrap around here, we're going to glue it when we cover it on the inside. But that's why you wonder why these fabric spacers. And it's just important to get these on right, because you will see these if you let these stick out or whatever. So spend a little time on this. It's the same thing here. You know the fabric's going to go from here across to this window side, and it's going to wrap. So get you a straight edge and go from here to here, and then look at it, you know. So here you can see it's perfectly flat up there along the top, and then this fabric spacer either needs to be perfectly flat or going in, so that the fabric's not really, you know, it's not pushing out, bulging into the fabrics. When you look at the fabric, you'll see a bulge sticking out. So I like to have it, you can see how it is there. It's just slightly slightly in. See, I can cut just a gap, and just a little bit of a gap there, which is fine. I'd rather pull it down a little bit than be pushing it out and sticking it in there. So spend some time on that. Do the same thing. Just look at where your fabric's going and make sure you're good. Nothing's dragging, nothing's sticking out all the way around as you do that. This is kind of weird here. This tube is inward, so the fabric's not going to touch it. So don't worry about it. So a lot of this, the fabric's not going to touch at all. It's just going to come to here because the fabric's going from here to that one. So you can see none of this here really matters too much. Here, see how it goes like that. It's going to go from here to here. So that's kind of the baggage door. We got the quarter turn fasteners that will attach to the door here. We pre-fitted the baggage door, drilled the holes for it to mount here, you can see. And we made sure that all fit nice up into here. And of course it'll have to be painted first. As the fuel lines on this side run, we were talking about, that was our drain, our low point drain that came over from the other tank. Here, this low point drain, you see it's coming up here, here, and here's coming through the stringer. And I talked about in the forum where I actually have to go in and I cut it. I don't want this thing hitting the stringer. Now, this is too tight, so you have to actually cut this out with your Dremel tool or something. Here's the part we add into it. We have to put this little piece, it's a little indenture. You see that actually goes in the extended baggage to let the fuel line come through. So it lets the fuel line come through, and of course it comes up, goes here, and comes to the back of the tank. So from the back of the right tank, it's coming down, and it's going to the low point drain there. So any water in the tank, the tank is actually sitting back a little bit, so the water's going to come back in the tank. It's going to hit this drain, come down here, and go to the low point drain. Okay. The front one we talked about earlier, that's going back around, also hidden, so it'll go to the drain before it's the fuel selector, that way. So anyway, that's the fuel lines on the right side. The ELT wire, if you hopefully, I don't know, maybe they'll have it figured out. And we don't know why other people aren't having this problem. We think maybe people with the Canards ELTs aren't realizing that there's a self-test that it goes through and to look at it. But every one of my airplanes has had a problem, and just a finicky problem. We think it's the ground plane. Right now, everything else points to it being the ground plane. So that extended baggage with that bracket is not working, okay? So check yours and see what you got to come up with. But in any case, the ELT antenna, it goes from here, it comes into here, and then just run it down this stringer. And you see I've got a few zip ties here. I've drilled a hole, and then I put the electrical tape around it, and that's holding the ELT coax all the way down through here. And you can see it's coming down through here, running around here. I put a grommet in here. You see I've got it zip tied up in there. Comes back around. It's going to go down this spot. All your wires are going to eventually come down through this spot in the floorboard, and go back around and go in there and just tape it out. And then, well, actually it's going there, coming up through the battery box, coming out this side, and then connecting to the ELT. Like I say, we'll take all this out for now anyway. I just wanted to make sure I tested it and got this worked out. Get that off like that. You can just take, this is where the battery will sit. So I've got it all ready for the battery to go in here with just some heavy duty Velcro. This base is this Velcroed into with the base into that. And of course that whole piece comes out. There's underneath. Now what I've done is I've gone ahead and, like I say in my forum post, I like to do as much of this stuff as I can. So I've gone in here and put all the solenoids already in place. This is the trim box. It has to go in there. I put the circuit breakers in. I put all this stuff in, and the seat rails. I put all this in before I even put the floorboard in. I did this over on my bench where it's easy to work, flip over, upside down. I did all that on the bench. And I talk about that in the forum too. But you can see here how the floorboard has gone in. Everything here in the floorboard, all the pedals are connected. I put tape along the sides to keep it from scratching. I've been fitting the panels, which is something that you want to be sure and do now. Don't, according to Cub Crafter manuals, are going to do this on the finish. Well, you've got to drill all these holes. This is where you're going to attach the, they call for plastic pop rivets to connect all this stuff together. And while you're drilling, if you're drilling these and you want to have to go through the floorboard where you're going to put a pop rivet through, a plastic pop rivet, push rivet, then that fabric is right here, and it's really nerve-wracking. So just go ahead and fit them right now. Easy to do. I drill half my holes from the outside. I mark them on the outside. This is the floorboard where it turns up, so the side panels are mounted to the floorboard, and I do that. I also I'm going to put nut plates in instead of those plastic pop rivets. So these are the nut plates. It takes almost 60 of the nut plates and screws and obviously rivets. So all these are going to go into I just got to finish drilling the holes, then I'll go back and I'll put the nut plates all in here, and then I'm actually using these pieces here. This is just a plastic piece, you know, and you can put the screw through it, and then you put this cover over it so it looks nice. So I'm going to use these. I got 60 of these ordered with the screws, same ones that are used right here in the cup crafters. So it'll be nice. So these will be connecting all the panels together. They'll all be done. Look just like this, nice and finished, and they'll be nut plated on instead of. Once you see how these plastic pop rivets are. They're not very fun to work with and don't work very good. So just gonna eliminate it and put 60 nut plates on it. The mast and the blocks and the torque tube and all of that, you know, we talk about in the forum and how to connect all the cables. As you can see here, kind of how they're going. As I'm putting stuff together, I always pull the hardware while I'm looking at the figure. Right now, I'm not going to put the sticks in yet, just because I don't want them in the way while I'm working on this stuff. But I know now I've already got the hardware pulled. I don't have to go back later and go looking up through all the figures and the manuals to figure out what's going where. So I'll pull everything I can now and get that done. What else? What other questions you got? You can see here how the extended baggage went down. These were the seat belt holes. So the seat belts will actually attach through these later. These look like gunsling mounts on these two. There'll be a bar. I'm getting ready to actually cut out the bar, which is way easier to do now also if you fit these panels. You see the crossbar right here is the hole. I'm going to take a drill. I'm going to drill that out just to that shape. Same on the other side. And the crossbar will go in right here. So it actually goes across like this. It will go in, this end will go into here, and then over to there it slides in, and then the seat straps over it. This slides through the front of the seat, and then it has straps that go over that bar, and the little swivel clips that clip into here. So that's why you've got these little clips with the holes. The holes should go sideways like this. You put those in place of the screws in the bases. These are the front seat belt screw holes. You have to cut these out and match drill them to the fuselage. These screws are going to come out later. We're actually going to put pulleys in here later when we put our aileron cables through after we're putting the wings on. This cover goes in only after you've installed the pulleys that are down there with the cables. One thing I do is when I'm running the rudder cables, so I've got those connected and run through all of the things, I don't attach them. You notice I've got them laying loose. So until I get through fitting my interior panels, leave those loose, because here you have to actually pull it away to have room to put the panel in and slide it in place. So if it's loose, it's a lot easier to do. So I'm just finishing up the panels now. I'm getting ready to pull them all back out. Everything's been pre-drilled. All my holes are marked and pre-drilled. I cleat coat them as I went. I pulled most of the cleat coats out now, but I cleat coat everything. Now I'm gonna pull them all, put the nut plates on, and I'm gonna put some pockets on it, and then I'll put these panels away until after it's painted and finished. One thing I like to do is put a lot of pockets. So I use these little web pockets right here. I get them off of Amazon, and there's a link to this on the forum post. But what I do, you can see here, I've located where I wanted them. So here I'm putting them just above where the rudder cable is going to come across. On the bottom here, see, just pull that rudder cable tight. I put it through, then I mark where the screw holes are going to be. And I do the same back here. Then I've got a little round one, smaller one that's more of a oval shape that's going to go up here by my left foot. So it'll be above the cable, the connectors here for the pedals. And then of course this has got the drink holder, on this side already, so there's no room for a pocket here. But then I'll put another one of these pockets I'm gonna put on this side over here. So what I've done, you see, I just leave the paper on it for now so to keep them protected. And you can kind of see where you want to put them. You want to put them so they're out of the way of the rudder cables. Pull the rudder cable, kind of tight, see where it goes across there, and then make sure your pockets are above your rudders, but give you enough room here. And then what I do is I go to the back side, and you see, now I can check and make sure where I've got my pockets coming through, I'm not going to hit any of the tubes or anything, okay? So what I've actually done, you see I've taken a silver Sharpie and I've marked these tubes on the back side everywhere. So I know all my tubes and everything are marked here. I can actually go back here on this side and see, I can kind of look right now and I can push where that hole is and come over here and see if it's going to be in the way or not. And I can tell now, that way you can see now if you're really off. But once you pull the panels off, take the panels off, then you can set them on the bench. You can look where your marks are. You can just put your hand on the other side. You can make sure you can see where your Sharpie marks are, where your tubes are. So you may have to move it just a little bit to make sure you're not putting any screws that are going to go right through where a tube is going to be. So I'll put a big rectangular one there for the back passenger, one right here, which would be left to the left of the front seat, and then a front pocket there for the pilot. And then I come back over on this side and I put one over on here. Now I'll do the same thing. I'll have my rudder pedal cable going across, and I'll put me one right there out of the way up top there. And that handles all of that. Here's your rudder pedals. All your pedals again, springs, they're installed. When you install these springs, some people had a problem with them coming loose. I've had one pop off. But after I put these through here, I get some pliers and I crimp that down as best I can so that as you're pulling them and they're coming back and forth, you don't ever want this to pop back out. It's not that hard to put back in, but you got to crawl upside down and get back up in there backwards and try to get that back in there. So try to crimp that down good here. You'll also see here where I've marked her, I'm gonna have to trim the front of this just a hair. I run a straight edge across the fuselage, and this where the heater duct is, it's going to be sticking out just a little bit, so I've marked that now. So I'm going to trim it a little bit when I take it off of the rotator. Here you can see this is the insulator material, and this is the cover you'll put on the bottom, which is going to be for your heat coming in from the airplane. And the bottom pulley, and if I can get it out here, and I'll give it a spin, turn it over, we'll kind of look at the back, the bottom. So here you can kind of see the bottom. Here's your front pulley that we put in. That was what we just talked about. This is what you'll do to the floorboard with using your meth glue. That's your little support for your pedal base. All this is really good detail in my forum post. This is the front pulley coming from the front stick. You install that first, then you're coming back, and that cable is coming back, going over the top of this pulley here that you put in. Then it's coming back, going through the back of the stick right here. So this is the rear stick, so it's going through the fair lead in there. Then you got a double pulley that's in here that you install it. You have to install it from the top side of the floorboard, so don't put that cover on until after you've done this. You can see here that the rear stick, this is coming from the rear stick. It's on the left side of the aircraft, so this left pulley all the way back, it's going to be to the left side all the way over. And then the one from the front stick then is going to come over. It's going to the right side pulley, going to the right side of all your stringers, center stringer down through there, and then into the back. As you come on back, this is the bottom carbon fiber piece that connects to the tube here. So your fabric is going to come across that. This V here, we're going to end up cutting the fabric out and wrapping it around here because this will have a metal belly pan here, so we can go back up and access under the seat here. After we paint it, we'll come back and install all the wiring and servos for the autopilots and so forth. So the cables are continuing on down. They'll actually, sit up. You'll see how they'll, when it's sitting upright, they'll sit, and you pull them tight, they'll be riding along this area here. This one goes, these go up in those slots there. And when you cover, I'm getting ready to tighten these cables up a little more, but when you turn it over and cover it, you'll just make sure they're all kind of sitting straight. But you'll have access covers along the bottom. There's an access cover right here that we're going to use, so that way I can get up and I can actually get to this antenna okay, and access any of this plumbing right here. Back here we got a rear pulley. Same thing, your rear stick is staying on the left side of your aircraft, coming through the left pulley. Front stick is coming on the right side, going to the right pulley. Coming on back, you can see the right side of what we talked about a minute ago, where it's coming underneath the little angle there underneath the trim motor. The right one's going up into that little triangle area there. And as it comes on back, then you'll have it marked which one is going up and which one's going down, okay? Back of your stringer is mounting in here. Just trying to wing it here, so we're already going 40 minutes it looks like, so it's probably enough jabbering. And you can see here the electrical wiring here on this end here. You wrap it good with the friction tape and then zip tie it to the stringer there. You can just drill a hole right into the stringer. Then the rest of the way you're just dabbing it with silicone ever so often, to hold it in place like that. The inside of the baggage area, you can kind of see, all your, make sure when you're riveting everything, you're riveting from the inside out. I leave all the plastic, as you can see, on everything until after I'm painted. Makes it a lot easier. Later I'll put the carpet. I always get the carpet kit that Cup Crafters sell. It's really good. It velcros in. It's really lightweight and it's super nice. If you get it dirty, you just pull it out. You can hose it off. Put it back in there. Get all your elk or moose or doll sheep remnants out. So what else? That's about it. So we'll get this wrapped up and then start to cover it here probably tomorrow. So I'll maybe do a little cover video after we get it covered and talk about that. I know I've already got one video in here talking about doing the poly brush and stuff on the fuselage, so about to catch up with that one. So anyway, I think I've given everybody a good view of about everything, so you can kind of see on the video if you have a question about something you're doing. You can see here where we grind off the powder coat. This is so you'll have a good ground. You want to do the same thing to your engine mount. When it goes on here, the welded mount, it'll go on here. You want a good ground. There's some contradiction in the manual. The manual says to the left side. Actually, I think it's the right side because the actual ground is coming on this side, but I don't know that it matters. So I always do both sides. I do this side and this side, and make sure you do it on the mount. When you put your welded engine mount onto here, it'll go onto here, and then your engine will mount onto the front of the mount. So make sure you got to have a good ground connection going through there. Same thing here. These are ground tabs on both sides that will be used when you do all your instrument wiring, all your wires, everything underneath the panel. You'll have stacks of ground wires, just stacks. I don't know how many, there's stacks. So the screws will go through here and you'll stack them all on here. So you'll have 2 over here and 2 over here. So you'll have, maybe 20 or 30 ground wires all coming into here. So I clean it off now while it's easy and there's no cover here to make a mess. I go ahead and I get this all cleaned off, both sides, front and back side, for that. Also, you want to make sure there's another grounding tab, a big lug that's down here, and you'll have to actually get a I think it's a 5/16 nut for it. They don't give it to you in the kit for some reason, but just clean that off real good. Grind all the powder coat off, because you're going to have all your under seat grounds, or you'll have a whole stack of them right there too. When you go to your solenoid, you got a starter solenoid, a master solenoid that's there. And you know, we've got all of our throttle assemblies done. You can't really see those now, but you have to pull to get this panel on. You have to take these pieces that come on here off, and then you have to line these up, and you can put the panels in like this. For now, it's going to end up being, you just want to end up making them where they're flush with this. I do put the felt. You'll see there's the felt that goes on all of these, and there's only this area here is going to actually have Velcro on it later. I'm just going to wait and do that on the finish, but this top part will actually be Velcroed, you know, to this part. So right now I just got it sitting in place where it'll go. The Velcro will actually go underneath here too, where this goes to the window panel here. Fabric is coming across here. Your back windows go into these slots right here. You can see these panels here, they go up. There's a lip right here, a lip, and a lip. So these panels, you want to get them fitted so that they'll go up underneath that lip, so they're nice. You know, the corners don't have any big gaps. You just kind of move the whole thing back and forth until you get it just right. Fit all your joints, you know, good on your panels. This panel is meeting right here. So you get a panel there, a panel here, and a panel there. And I can't think of anything else. I know there's probably a lot more questions, but hopefully, like I say, you've seen enough of the video here where you can look at something or pause it or back up to look at something else closer. I do talk about when you get ready to put the brakes in, if you're going with stainless steel, don't use the manual fittings. You have to put this fitting here, which is a different fitting, which goes to the stainless steel. If you're not covering the landing gear, which I never do, because I don't want it to get torn up in the rocks and the gravel, I use stainless steel brake lines, which is an option through Cup Crafters, and it takes a different fitting here. So these are the fittings, and I tell you in the forum what fittings those are. So put those in to start with, and everything else here is all attached, you know, and ready to go. We'll do the final adjustment of the lengths of the shafts on the brake master cylinders after we've connected everything and got tension on it, and we do that by making sure how much pedal clearance we have, you know, back here, you know, from the front of the fuselage. The firewall, of course, will be right here. So we'll do that and get the boot cowl built. Get ready to build that next. Get it covered and painted, and away we go. Let me know if you got any questions.